division and conflict, we mark the dawn of a new Middle East.
Mexico's president calls for a referendum on whether his predecessors could be charged with corruption and...
I just remember the word, like the Antichrist or the devil, or I don't know.
Il est plutôt rare.
Madonna announces that she's co-writing and will direct a biopic of her own life. That's all coming up here on the BBC World Service.
I'm David Harper with the BBC News. President Trump has hailed the dawn of a new Middle East as the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain signed diplomatic accords with Israel at the White House. They are only the third and fourth Arab countries to recognize the Jewish state. But the Palestinians have condemned the accord as a betrayal. Here's our Arab Affairs editor, Sebastian Usher.
All four participants on the White House lawn, President Trump, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and the foreign ministers of Bahrain and the UAE, naturally painted an optimistic view of what these accords could bring. President Trump hailed them as a major stride in which people of all faiths and backgrounds could live together in peace and prosperity in the Middle East. The UAE and Bahraini foreign ministers echoed this, but were keen to stress that Palestinians and their cause have not been forgotten. That's a message that for now at least will have little traction in the West Bank or Gaza, where protests were held throughout the day.
The mayor of Louisville, Kentucky, says the city will pay $12 million to the family of a black woman killed by police 6 months ago. Breonna Taylor was shot 8 times when officers burst into her home. BBC's Larry Madowo says the move may not answer protesters' demands for justice.
The people who gather at a memorial in downtown Louisville will still expect that the charges are introduced against these officers. Only one was fired, 2 are on administrative leave, and they feel the reform that is needed goes much deeper. There's been decades and decades of mistrust between the Louisville Metro Police Department and the black community, especially there. And the mayor, Greg Fisher, understands that. So this settlement of $12 million, which is the largest in the history of the city, is one aspect. But he also told us that he has ordered the top to go out and review the entire police department.
Firefighters in California are trying to stop a wildfire from engulfing a historic observatory in the mountains outside Los Angeles. Flames from the Bobcat fire have spread to within 150 meters of the Mount Wilson Observatory. Founded more than a century ago, the Mount Wilson Observatory has made a huge contribution to our understanding of the universe. Bulldozers and firefighting planes are being used to protect the complex. The number of confirmed coronavirus infections in India has crossed 5 million, the highest in the world after the US. Over the past week, experts say the virus is spreading much faster than in any other country. From Mumbai, here's Yogita Lamai.
COVID-19 numbers continue to stack up and bring India's already inadequate medical infrastructure to its knees. Doctors at a public hospital in Mumbai are now being allowed to isolate for just 1 day between their duties in COVID and other wards, which puts patients at risk. Many are questioning why restrictions continue to be eased, including reopening metro rail systems across the country, even as the health crisis is getting worse.
World News from the BBC. The Mexican president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, has asked the Senate to hold a referendum on whether to prosecute 5 former presidents for alleged corruption and other crimes. Mr. López Obrador says he wants the people to vote on whether all the presidents in power over the last 30 years were guilty. And 100 lucky Mexicans have won $1 million each in a national lottery organised to raffle off the presidential jet.
J'aime les sciences physiques.
Obrador had vowed he would get rid of the custom-fitted Dreamliner, complete with king-size bed, in an attempt to fight what he says are decades of institutional corruption and excess. Our America's editor Candice Piet reports.
La pluie est rare dans ce
pays. La pluie est rare dans ce pays. Hundreds of years, children in uniform announced each number to a panel of referees. 6 million tickets were offered, but only 100 people won, taking home $1 million each. The government said the money raised would help fund a new public health service. Critics say the president is literally turning healthcare spending in Mexico into a lottery. The plane itself is still on sale.
Swedish researchers have found that children who experience social isolation have a greater risk of developing serious illnesses in later life. By taking other factors into consideration, the study found boys and girls who were less popular at the age of 13 were a third more likely eventually to develop heart and other circulatory diseases.
Le moment présent est important.
NASA says the sun is entering a new cycle of greater activity for the next few years, signaling possible side effects for life on Earth. Coming out of the solar minimum means the sun is likely to explode more flares and plasma, which can affect the Earth's magnetic field and play havoc
La cuisine est
with radio-based
publique.
technologies and power grids. Astronauts also risk exposure to greater radiation. That's the latest BBC News.
Hello, it's 6 minutes past 1 GMT. Andrew with the newsroom from the BBC World Service. I'm Emilio San Pedro. We begin in the United States, where officials in Louisville, Kentucky have agreed to pay $12 million to the family of Breonna Taylor, a black woman who was killed in her home by the police. It is one of the largest settlements of its kind ever paid in the U.S. She was 26, and when she was shot at least 5 times and killed on the 13th of March during a mistaken drugs raid. Her name has featured prominently in anti-racism protests in recent months. At a news conference, the mayor of Louisville, Greg Fisher, apologized to Ms. Taylor's mother, Tamika Palmer, for her death.
I cannot begin to imagine Ms. Palmer's pain